Okay, so let's be honest. Everyone's fantasized about getting rich quick, right? Like winning the lottery or finding some buried treasure, that dream of instant wealth. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
And today we're going to take a deep dive into what happens when that desire for, like, financial freedom crashes into, the allure of easy money,
Right.
which is the world of get-rich-quick schemes. So we're going to unpack how they work, why they're so tempting, and most importantly, how not to fall victim.
It really is interesting. We live in a time where information is so readily available, yet, these schemes still manage to stick around.
Right.
They're always like evolving to take advantage of our deepest desires and anxieties.
Yeah.
And, you're right. The desire for financial security is like fundamental, but it's often kind of tangled up with all these ideas we have about success, about status, about, the whole pursuit of the American dream.
So it's not just about the money, but what the money represents.
Exactly. These schemes tap into this like deeper psychological need,
Yeah.
like a need for validation,
Yeah.
a sense of belonging, maybe even a shortcut to like social mobility, which often feels really out of reach these days.
Okay, so we're talking about schemes selling us a fantasy, like a shortcut to the good life. But before we go too deep into, like, the psychology of it all, let's lay some groundwork,
Right.
Our sources mention a few common types of get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about some of the ones that are, like, most common out there?
Sure. One classic example is the fake franchise scheme. It really preys on that entrepreneurial spirit, the desire to be your own boss. They often like dangle this idea of a proven system, a
Right.
business in a box that practically guarantees success, right?
Right.
But the reality is a lot of these so-called opportunities are poorly structured. They lack like proper support,
Yeah.
and they end up leaving investors with a pile of debt instead of profits.
I've always been curious about those fast food franchise opportunities,
Mhm.
It seems like a pretty safe bet, like everyone's got to eat. Right. But I'm guessing that even something as, like, straightforward as a burger joint could be a front for a scam, huh?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Scammers are incredibly good at like mimicking legitimate businesses.
Yeah.
They might create a fake brand that looks just like a well-known chain, with a fancy website and brochures and even those staged discovery days,
Right.
all to create this air of legitimacy. But as soon as they've got your investment, they vanish. And you're left with nothing but a shell of a business and a mountain of debt.
Just like they're selling you a mirage, like a culinary illusion that disappears as you get closer.
Exactly. Another common scheme is miracle products. Those magic pills and supplements,
Well-
methods that promise crazy results. Think instant weight loss, overnight riches, even cures for chronic diseases.
Yeah.
These scams prey on our deepest insecurities and desires for like quick fixes. And they often use all this pseudoscientific jargon and glowing testimonials to cover up the fact that they don't actually work.
Yeah, it's like the modern-day version of the snake oil salesman, right?
Yeah.
But instead of traveling wagons, they're peddling their stuff online on social media, reaching a much wider audience.
And that brings us to social media scams, which are especially dangerous because they use the influence of like influencers and online communities
Yeah.
to build this false sense of trust and credibility.
I've always wondered about those influencer endorsements, Do they actually believe in the products they're pushing, or are they just in it for the money?
It's tough to say, really. Some influencers might genuinely believe in the products, but others are just motivated by money.
Yeah.
And they often ignore the potential harm to their followers. And sadly, some influencers might not even realize they're promoting a scam.
Right.
They've been tricked themselves by slick marketing tactics and promises of easy money.
So it's kind of a mixed bag where genuine enthusiasm is all tangled up with deceptive marketing and, outright scams.
Right. And that's exactly why it's so important to be a careful consumer of information, no matter where it's coming from. Blind trust, even in people we admire, can make us really vulnerable.
So we've talked about fake franchises, miracle products, social media scams. Are there any other common types of get-rich-quick schemes that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, there are also the guaranteed betting systems, which often target people who are into sports betting or online gambling.
Mm-hmm.
These systems claim to have like cracked the code,
Right.
offering foolproof strategies to win big, but in reality, they're often based on faulty logic, statistical manipulation, or just plain deception.
So it's like they're selling you the keys to the casino, But the doors are locked from the inside.
Ah, that's a good way to put it.
Right.
And then there are the multi-level marketing schemes, or MLMs, which often try to pass themselves off as like legitimate business opportunities.
Yeah.
They draw people in with promises of, unlimited earning potential. But the truth is, most people who get involved end up losing money, often by buying overpriced products they're then pressured to sell to their friends and family.
Ah, the infamous pyramid scheme. Right.
Yeah.
Where success depends more on recruiting new members than actually selling product.
Exactly. And it's important to note that while pyramid schemes are illegal, some MLMs operate in a bit of a gray area. But the basic structure often ends up exploiting people lower down the chain.
So it's like a financial house of cards.
Yeah.
Where the people at the bottom are supporting a few at the top who are raking in the profits.
That's a great way to describe it. It's a reminder that even schemes that might seem legitimate on the surface can be built on a foundation of, exploitation and deception.
Okay, so now that we have a good idea of the types of scams out there, let's dig into the why. Why are these schemes so effective? What makes people fall for them?
Well, it all comes down to, human psychology.
Right.
These schemes are experts at taking advantage of our basic desires: financial security, independence, and even that thrill of beating the system,
Yeah.
They dangle this, tempting shortcut, especially when times are tough economically, preying on our anxieties and aspirations.
So they're kind of offering a quick fix to our deepest fears and insecurities. But instead of a real solution, they're just adding another layer of problems, potentially even more harm.
You got it. And besides exploiting our desires, these schemes use clever psychological manipulation tactics.
Yeah.
Think about those limited time offers.
Right.
Or those high-pressure sales pitches designed to get you to make a decision without thinking it through, to create that sense of urgency. They want you to act on impulse, not logic.
So they're like short-circuiting our common sense, hijacking our rational thought processes. But if we understand these tactics, can we protect ourselves from them?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
By understanding how these schemes work and recognizing the warning signs, you can develop a healthy skepticism that will make you less likely to fall for their tricks.
Okay, like that. So we've talked about the types of scams and the psychology behind them, but let's get into some real-world examples. Can you share any stories that really highlight the dangers and the devastating impact these scams can have?
Of course. One of the most notorious examples is Global, which was a huge Ponzi scheme that operated all over the world.
Right.
It promised unbelievable returns, attracting millions of investors. But like all Ponzi schemes, it was built on a shaky foundation, relying on a constant stream of new investors to pay off the earlier ones. When that new money dried up, the whole thing collapsed, leaving countless people financially ruined.
Wow. It's a stark reminder that these schemes aren't just harmless games. They have real-world consequences that shatter lives and destroy dreams. But can you give an example that might hit closer to home for our everyday listeners?
Well, think about the world of guaranteed betting systems, which take advantage of the hopes and dreams of people who believe they've found a foolproof way to beat the odds. One common trick is to use misleading statistics or, cherry-pick data.
Right, to make a system look like it's a winner.
So they're basically rigging the game, but instead of messing with the cards, they're manipulating the information.
Exactly. They might showcase a few successful bets while leaving out all the losses.
Yeah.
Which creates this distorted view of how effective this system actually is.
It's like showing the highlights of a losing season and making it look like a championship run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these tactics work so well because they tap into our natural biases.
Right.
Our tendency to look for information that confirms what we already believe, even if those beliefs are wrong.
Okay, so we've got the Ponzi schemes and the betting systems. Any other real-world examples you can think of that might resonate with our listeners?
Sure. Consider those miracle weight loss products, which often prey on our insecurities about our bodies and our desire for a quick fix. They might show these dramatic before and after pictures or testimonials from seemingly trustworthy sources, but these are often altered or just made up to create a false sense of how well the product works. So they're essentially selling a fantasy, a shortcut, to something that actually takes effort, dedication, and a sustainable approach to achieve.
Exactly. And these schemes are particularly harmful because they don't just lead to financial losses. They can also damage self-esteem and overall well-being.
Wow. Okay, so we've seen how these schemes play out in real life and the devastating consequences they can have. But let's shift gears and focus on empowering our listeners. What are the most important things to watch out for? How can we spot these schemes before it's too late?
Well, one of the most important things to remember is that legitimate opportunities rarely, if ever, guarantee success. Any investment involves risk, and returns are never certain.
So that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, still holds up.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another key point. Watch out for high-pressure tactics. Legitimate businesses and investment opportunities don't use scare tactics or artificial deadlines to push you into making a decision.
So if someone's pressuring you to act now before it's too late, that's a big red flag.
Exactly. They're trying to bypass your rational thinking and take advantage of your fear of missing out.
Okay, so we've got unrealistic guarantees and high-pressure tactics. What other warning signs should our listeners be on the lookout for?
Another red flag is a lack of transparency. Legitimate businesses and investment opportunities are upfront about how they work, their track record, and the risks involved. If you're dealing with someone who's evasive, doesn't want to answer questions, or gives you vague or inconsistent information, that's a major reason to be concerned.
So it's like dating, If someone's being shady about their past, it's probably a good idea to run in the other direction.
I like that analogy. And speaking of running, if your gut is telling you something's off, trust your instincts. Our intuition is often a powerful warning system, picking up on subtle cues that our conscious mind might miss.
So it's about tuning into that inner voice, that sense of unease that tells us something's not right.
Exactly. And this leads to another crucial point. Don't be afraid to walk away. No matter how tempting an opportunity seems, if you have any doubts, it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Solid advice. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, exploring the types of scams, the psychology behind them, and some key warning signs. But let's dive a little deeper into specific strategies for protecting ourselves, especially in this digital age where scams are becoming more and more sophisticated.
That's a great point. In our next segment, we'll be exploring the world of online scams, looking at how scammers are using social media, e-commerce platforms, and even artificial intelligence to target unsuspecting victims.
Sounds fascinating and a little bit scary. We'll be right back after a quick break to continue our deep dive into the world of get-rich-quick schemes. So before the break, we were talking about online scams and how they're changing in this digital age.
Yeah.
It's like scammers have this whole new playground now with social media and e-commerce and even artificial intelligence.
You're absolutely right. The internet has created this vast interconnected world that's full of incredible opportunities, but also, unprecedented challenges.
Yeah.
And for scammers, it's a perfect storm, right? They can reach a global audience,
Right.
operate anonymously, and use technology to create these really sophisticated and persuasive schemes.
So let's break down how these online scams are evolving. What are some of the most common tactics they're using to target people?
Well, one of the most common tactics is phishing scams,
Right.
which are designed to steal personal information like usernames, passwords, credit card details. They often come in the form of emails or text messages that look like they're from legitimate organizations,
Yeah.
like banks, online retailers, even government agencies.
I've definitely seen those. They often look really convincing with official logos and urgent language that makes you want to click a link or download an attachment.
Exactly. They prey on our sense of trust and our tendency to react quickly to urgent requests.
Right.
But once you click on that link or download that attachment, you could be giving scammers access to your sensitive information.
So it's like opening a door to your digital vault and inviting the thieves right in.
Perfect analogy. And this brings us to another common tactic. Social engineering,
Okay.
which involves manipulating people into revealing confidential information or doing things that benefit the scammer.
So it's not just about hacking into systems, but hacking into people's minds.
Precisely. Scammers are really good at exploiting our emotions,
Yeah.
our trust, even our desire to help. They might impersonate someone, create fake profiles on social media, or even use romance scams
Right.
to build relationships with their victims, all with the aim of getting access to their money or personal information.
It's like they're playing puppet master with our emotions, pulling the strings to get what they want.
That's a powerful image. It really highlights how sneaky these scams can be. They often prey on our vulnerabilities,
Right.
our desire for connection, our need for approval, or even our fear of missing out.
Okay, so we've got phishing scams, social engineering tactics, and all the emotional manipulation that goes along with them. What other online scams are really common these days?
Well, another growing threat is e-commerce scams,
Okay.
which target online shoppers who are looking for deals or hard-to-find items.
Hmm.
Scammers might create fake websites that look just like real online retailers,
Right.
offering products at super low prices or promising exclusive access to in-demand items.
So it's like the online version of a bait and switch, where the product you get is either fake, damaged, or never shows up.
Exactly. And these scams can be especially hard to spot because they often operate through legitimate online marketplaces, making it tough to tell the difference between real sellers and scammers.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, where the haystack is constantly growing and changing.
That's a good way to put it. And this leads to another important point. The rise of artificial intelligence is making things even more complicated when it comes to online scams.
AI-powered scams. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound futuristic, but it's becoming more and more common.
Ah.
Scammers are using AI to make deepfake videos, create realistic-sounding text messages, and even automate social engineering tactics, making it even harder to tell the difference between real communication and sophisticated scams.
So it's like they're weaponizing technology,
Yeah.
turning our own tools against us.
In a way, yes. And that's why it's so important to be vigilant,
Right.
to understand the tactics scammers are using, and to have a healthy dose of skepticism about anything that seems too good to be true or just feels off.
Okay, so we've got phishing scams, social engineering tactics, e-commerce fraud, and the rising threat of AI-powered scams. That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
It can feel really overwhelming. But let's focus on what our listeners can do to protect themselves in this increasingly complex digital world.
Sure. One of the most important things you can do is be mindful of your digital footprint.
Okay.
Think carefully about the information you share online, especially on social media. Scammers often use publicly available information to target their victims, so be careful about sharing things like your home address, phone number, or financial information.
So it's about being thoughtful about what we share online, not just blindly clicking accept on every privacy policy that pops up.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important point. Beware of suspicious links or attachments. If you get an email or text message from someone you don't know,
Right.
or from someone you do know but it seems out of character, don't click on any links or download any attachments.
Yeah.
Hover your mouse over links to see the actual URL,
Okay.
and be cautious of any URLs that look strange or have typos.
So it's like checking the address on an envelope before you open it, making sure it's actually from who it says it's from.
Exactly. And this leads to another crucial point. Enable two-factor authentication whenever you can.
Right.
This adds an extra layer of security to your online accounts, requiring you to enter a unique code from your phone or email in addition to your password when you log in.
So it's like having a double lock on your digital doors, making
Yeah.
it a lot harder for scammers to get in.
Exactly. And speaking of passwords, make sure to use strong, unique passwords for each of your online accounts.
Yeah.
Don't use common words or phrases, and consider using a password manager to create and store your passwords securely.
So it's not enough to just use your dog's name or your favorite sports team. We need to step up our password game.
Absolutely. And this leads to another important point. Be cautious about using public Wi-Fi networks. These networks are often unsecured, which makes it easier for scammers to snoop on what you're doing online.
Right.
If you have to use public Wi-Fi, make sure to use a VPN to encrypt your connection.
So it's like having a digital bodyguard protecting your data as it travels through the wild west of the internet.
Another great analogy, and speaking of protection, keep your software up to date.
Right.
Software updates often include security patches that fix known vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
which makes it harder for scammers to exploit weaknesses in your devices.
So it's like keeping your digital armor polished and in good repair, making it tougher for scammers to break through your defenses.
Exactly. And lastly, trust your gut. If something feels off about an online offer, a website, or an email, don't ignore that feeling.
Yeah.
It's often a sign that something's not right.
So it's about listening to that inner voice, that sense of unease that tells us something's not quite right.
Precisely. And remember, it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, exploring the tactics scammers are using online and some key strategies for protecting ourselves. But let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. What are some of the broader societal trends that are contributing to the rise of get-rich-quick schemes, both online and offline?
That's an important question. I think one of the key trends is the growing income inequality and economic insecurity that a lot of people are facing.
Right.
When people feel financially squeezed, they're more likely to be tempted by promises of quick riches,
Yeah.
even if those promises seem unrealistic or too good to be true.
So it's like scammers are preying on our economic anxieties,
Yeah.
our fear of being left behind in a system that often feels rigged against us.
Exactly. And this is made worse by the constant barrage of messages about wealth and success that we're exposed to through social media, advertising, and pop culture.
Hmm.
We're constantly being told that we need to be richer, thinner, more attractive, more successful, and that there are shortcuts to achieving these things.
It's like we're living in a culture of instant gratification, where patience and hard work are seen as old-fashioned values.
And this creates a perfect environment for get-rich-quick schemes, which offer a tempting escape from the perceived grind of traditional paths to success.
So it's not just about individual psychology, but the larger cultural and economic forces that are shaping our desires and vulnerabilities.
Exactly. And that's why it's crucial to be aware of these broader trends, to be critical of the messages we're bombarded with, and to develop a sense of financial literacy and empowerment.
Okay, so we've got income inequality, the culture of instant gratification, and this constant stream of messages about wealth and success. What other societal trends are fueling these get-rich-quick schemes?
Well, another key trend is the increasing sophistication of technology,
Hmm.
which, as we talked about earlier, is being used by both scammers and legitimate businesses.
Yeah,
This creates a kind of blurring of the lines,
right.
making it harder to tell the difference between real opportunities and sophisticated scams.
So it's like we're entering a digital Wild West, where the rules are always changing and the lines between good and bad are getting harder to see.
Exactly. And this is made worse by the erosion of trust in traditional institutions, whether it's the government, the media, or even big corporations.
Right.
When people feel disillusioned with the status quo, they're more likely to turn to alternative sources of information and opportunities, even if those sources are unreliable or deceptive.
So it's like scammers are stepping into that void, offering a sense of hope and possibility in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to develop a critical eye,
Mm-hmm.
to question assumptions, and to be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers or a shortcut to success.
Great advice. So we've talked about the tactics scammers use, the psychological vulnerabilities they exploit, and the bigger societal trends that are contributing to the rise of get-rich-quick schemes.
Mm.
But before we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope and empowerment. What are some of the positive things happening in the fight against financial fraud?
Well, one encouraging trend is the growing awareness of financial scams and the increasing amount of resources available to help people protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Organizations like the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Better Business Bureau are working hard to educate consumers, investigate scams, and hold scammers accountable.
So it's like the cavalry is coming, but we need to be ready to meet them halfway by learning about these scams and being proactive about protecting our finances.
Exactly. And this leads to another positive trend. The growing collaboration between government agencies, law enforcement, and the private sector to fight financial fraud.
Oh.
They're sharing information, developing new technologies, and working together to create a safer financial environment.
So it's like they're building a digital fortress, strengthening the walls against scammers and creating a safer place for people to manage their money.
A great analogy. And this is supported by the increasing role of technology in detecting and preventing financial fraud. Companies are using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data analytics to identify suspicious activity,
Right.
flag potential scams, and protect consumers from financial harm.
So it's like having a digital guardian angel watching over our transactions and warning us about potential threats.
Exactly. And this brings us to another encouraging trend. Consumers are becoming more empowered.
Go.
People are getting smarter about financial scams, more skeptical of unrealistic promises, and more proactive in safeguarding their financial well-being.
So it's like we're taking back control, arming ourselves with knowledge, and refusing to be passive victims of financial fraud.
Precisely. And this is ultimately what it takes to combat get-rich-quick schemes and create a more secure financial future for everyone.
Great insights. So while the world of get-rich-quick schemes is always changing and becoming more complex, there's still hope.
Mm.
With more awareness, collaboration, and advances in technology, we can fight back against financial fraud and build a safer and more equitable financial world for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, if you do encounter a scam or think you might be a target, Don't hesitate to report it to the authorities. By speaking up, you can help prevent others from falling victim to these schemes.
That's right. Your voice matters. By sharing your experiences, you can contribute to making the financial world a safer place for all of us. So welcome back to the deep dive. We've really been getting into the whole world of get-rich-quick schemes.
Yeah.
Exploring the tactics they use, the psychology they play on, and the societal trends that kind of keep them going. It's been quite a journey,
It has.
but I hope it's one that's left you feeling more informed and empowered, not less.
Absolutely. I think knowledge is really the best weapon we have when it comes to navigating the world of personal finance.
Right.
And our conversation today has really highlighted the fact that these schemes aren't just about money. They're about understanding people, our desires, our weaknesses, and how those things can be manipulated, especially when we're feeling uncertain.
As we've been talking, I keep coming back to this idea of a shortcut.
Yeah.
It seems like
Yeah.
that's at the core of so many of these schemes. This promise of skipping the hard work, the discipline, the delayed gratification,
Right.
all the things that are usually part of, achieving real financial security.
You're right. It's like our brains are wired to look for the easiest path, the quick win.
Yeah.
And in a world that's constantly showing us images of overnight success and instant gratification,
Right.
it's no surprise that the idea of a shortcut is so appealing.
So how do we fight that? How do we change our thinking from chasing quick riches to, a more sustainable long-term way of building wealth?
Well, I think the first step is recognizing that real wealth isn't just about piling up money. It's about building financial well-being,
Okay.
which includes things like security, stability, and a sense of control over your finances.
Right.
It's about making smart choices, developing good financial habits,
Yeah.
and building a solid base for the future.
So it's about shifting our focus from the destination to the journey,
Exactly.
realizing that building wealth is an ongoing thing, not a quick fix.
Exactly. And that journey involves setting realistic goals, having a solid financial plan,
Yeah.
and making steady progress over time. It's about understanding that there are no shortcuts to success, only paths that require patience, discipline, and good decision-making.
So we need to be more like the tortoise, not the hare.
Yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Right. I like that analogy. It reminds us that building real wealth isn't always glamorous or exciting. It often means making sacrifices, waiting for things we want, and staying focused on the long game. But the payoff is definitely worth it.
Okay, so we've talked about the mindset shift, the importance of thinking long-term when it comes to building wealth. What are some practical steps our listeners can take to protect themselves from these get-rich-quick schemes and create more financial well-being in their lives?
Well, one of the most important things you can do is learn about personal finance.
Right.
There are tons of resources out there, online, in libraries, through community groups,
Yeah.
that can help you understand the basics of budgeting, saving, investing, and managing debt.
So it's about empowering yourself with knowledge, becoming a smarter consumer of financial information.
Exactly. The more you understand about how money works, the better you'll be at making good decisions and avoiding those common financial traps,
All right.
including those get-rich-quick schemes.
And remember, everyone, financial literacy isn't just for Wall Street experts or people with fancy degrees. It's for everyone. It's about taking charge of your financial life and creating a secure future for yourself and the people you care about.
Well said. And along with education, I think it's also really important to have a healthy dose of skepticism whenever you come across a financial opportunity that sounds too good to be true or promises crazy returns.
Right.
Remember, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, like that old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Someone always ends up paying the price.
Exactly.
And with these get-rich-quick schemes, it's often the unsuspecting victim who gets left holding the bag.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important point. Beware of those high-pressure tactics.
Yeah.
Real investment opportunities don't use scare tactics or fake deadlines to force you into a decision. If someone's trying to rush you, it's a big warning sign.
So take your time, do your research, and don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they seem basic or silly.
Absolutely. It's your money. You have the right to be informed and make choices that fit your financial goals and your comfort level with risk.
Okay, so we've got education, skepticism, and standing firm against those high-pressure tactics. Any other advice for our listeners as they navigate this tricky world of personal finance?
One last piece of advice I would give is this. Build a strong support network.
Good.
Surround yourself with people you trust, like A financial planner, an accountant, or a knowledgeable friend or family member
Yeah.
who can offer guidance, support, and maybe a reality check when you need one.
It's like having a financial pit crew, a team of experts in your corner, helping you stay on course and avoid those costly mistakes.
Ah, I like that. And remember, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help.
Right.
It's a sign of strength and smart thinking. We all need some direction and support sometimes, especially when it comes to something as important as our financial well-being.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of get-rich-quick schemes.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the tactics, the psychology, the societal trends, and most importantly, ways to protect ourselves.
It's been a really interesting conversation,
It has.
and I hope it's been informative and empowering for everyone listening.
Absolutely. We've learned that while the promise of getting rich quick can be very tempting, the real path to financial security is about taking a long-term view, building our financial knowledge, and being skeptical of unrealistic promises.
And remember, knowledge is your best defense. By understanding how scams work, spotting the red flags, and making informed decisions, you can protect yourself and your loved ones from falling victim to these schemes.
Perfectly said. And on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of get-rich-quick schemes. We hope you found this exploration insightful and useful. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay vigilant out there.